The village did not appear on most maps, even in Ouagadougou. If you asked mid-level officials where Senga was, they would hesitate, then gesture vaguely north toward the scrubland where Burkina Faso thins into uncertainty. The road leading there broke apart into dust miles before the first mud brick homes appeared. No cell towers, no permanent military post. Just people who had learned to listen carefully at night. That was why the warning mattered. It arrived shortly after sunset, carried by a motorcycle courier who rode without headlights, his face wrapped in cloth. He did not ask for food or water. He handed over a folded note, already damp with sweat, to the village chief and left without a word. The message was simple. They are coming tonight. The chief read it twice, then once more aloud to the elders. No signature, no demands, just a time window and a direction. This was how it always started. In the capital, nearly 300 kilometers south, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood at a window, his jacket folded neatly on a chair behind him. The city lights flickered like nervous thoughts. He had not yet eaten dinner. When his intelligence chief entered, Traoré did not turn around. "Say it," he said. The man hesitated. Intercepted communications indicate an imminent raid, likely militants, possibly mixed with criminal elements. "Where?" "Senga." Traoré closed his eyes. The village had no strategic value, no mines, no military infrastructure, just people, which was precisely why it mattered. "How long?" Traoré asked. 3 hours, maybe less. The chief waited for instructions. Standard protocol would be to deploy a rapid response unit, call in air surveillance if available, issue a statement afterward. Traoré reached for his jacket. "I'm going," he said. The room went still. "Sir," the chief said carefully, "with respect." Traoré turned now, his expression calm but immovable. "If they die tonight," he said, "I will not read about it in the morning." There were no cameras when the helicopter lifted off. No announcement, just a small team, sworn to silence, flying low through the dark. Traoré wore no insignia, no presidential sash, just body armor, a rifle slung across his chest, and the weight of a country that never slept easily. In Washington, it was still afternoon. A junior analyst at AFRICOM flagged an unusual movement pattern, an unlogged flight, low altitude, heading north. She hesitated before forwarding it, then did so anyway. Her supervisor frowned at the screen. "That's odd," he said. By the time the helicopter touched down outside Senga, the village was already awake. Women gathered children. Men stood with farm tools they pretended were weapons. Fear had a smell, dust, sweat. Old fire stirred back to life. Traoré stepped forward, boots sinking into the sand. A few villagers recognized him instantly. Others needed a moment. Murmurs rippled. The village chief approached slowly. "You did not have to come," he said. Traoré met his eyes. "Yes," he replied, "I did." He ordered no speeches, no formations. Soldiers took positions along the perimeter, blending into shadows. Traoré himself walked the outer edge of the village, stopping to speak quietly to families huddled in doorways. "We will stay," he told them, "all night." Some believed him, some did not. Belief was a luxury here. Miles away in the scrubland where borders dissolved into myth, a convoy slowed. Men checked weapons, phones buzzed with new messages, confusion, delay, something unexpected. "Stand by," one message read. The militants had not anticipated this. In Langley, the first classified alert hit secure systems. Unconfirmed presence of Burkinabe head of state in forward area. A senior analyst read it twice, then leaned back slowly. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. The call chain began immediately. Pentagon, State Department, White House. At the National Security Council, a staffer summarized it bluntly. "He's either very brave," she said, "or very reckless." A retired general watching the feed from home shook his head. "That's not a photo op," he muttered. "That's a man daring history to repeat itself." Back in Senga, the night deepened. Traoré stood beside a small fire with a group of villagers. An old woman handed him tea. He accepted it with both hands. "My son died on a road like this," she said softly. "No one came." Traoré swallowed. "I'm here now," he replied. Hours passed. Crickets, distant movement. Radios whispered. Every shadow felt heavier than the last. Then just before dawn the sound came. Engines, low, cautious. Traoré raised his hand. Soldiers froze. The militants approached the village edge, unaware they had already been seen. When the first silhouette crossed an invisible line, Traoré stepped forward. "Stop," he called out. The voice carried farther than expected. Confusion followed. A flashlight beam swept the darkness and landed on him. Recognition was instant. Gunfire did not erupt. Instead, silence collapsed inward. Someone retreated. Someone else dropped a weapon. The plan unraveled. Minutes later, the convoy turned away, melting back into the dark. No shots were fired. In Washington, analysts stared at satellite imagery showing the movement reversing. One whispered, "They aborted." Another replied, "Because he was there." The sun rose over Senga quietly. Children emerged first, then laughter, hesitant, disbelieving. Traoré removed his helmet. The village chief embraced him, tears streaking dust down his face. "This will be remembered," he said. Traoré nodded. "So will the nights I wasn't here," he replied. News broke hours later. Burkina Faso president personally guards village overnight. Americans watched the footage on morning shows, coffee cooling in their hands. Some were moved, others skeptical. A former CIA officer spoke on air.
The footage replayed for days. In the U.S., it became one of those clips that refused to stay contained within a single narrative. Morning shows framed it as courage. Evening panels framed it as instability. Online, veterans paused the video at specific moments. The way Traoré held his rifle low, not raised. The way he stood slightly forward of his soldiers, not behind them. "That's not theater," one former Army Ranger said on a podcast. "That's someone who's made peace with dying in the wrong place." In Washington, peace was not the prevailing emotion. At the Pentagon, a closed-door meeting ran long into the evening. Maps of the Sahel glowed against the walls. Coffee went untouched. "He's changing the rules," an undersecretary said. "Presidents don't do perimeter security." "That's exactly why people believe him," another replied. A third voice cut in, quieter but sharper. "Belief is not stability. Charisma doesn't scale." No one disagreed. Intelligence reports trickled in from across the region. Militants were adjusting. Some avoided areas Traoré had visited. Others began circulating propaganda painting him as a reckless pawn, a man inviting chaos by blurring lines between leader and fighter. The danger wasn't just physical anymore. It was symbolic. Inside Burkina Faso's military, the night at Senga fractured something that had already been under strain. Younger soldiers whispered admiration. Officers whispered alarm. One colonel, a man who had survived 3 coups and learned to smell political weather, said it plainly during a private meeting. "If he dies like this," he said, "the country will burn. And if he lives doing this, the institution will disappear." Traoré listened. He said nothing. Instead, he requested the after-action reports. Not just from Senga, but from villages where no one had come. Pages filled with coordinates, casualty numbers, delayed responses, excuses polished into policy language. He read them alone late at night. In one report, a village not far from Senga had been attacked 2 weeks earlier. The response unit arrived at dawn. 27 dead, no high-level visit, no cameras. Traoré closed the file and pressed his palm flat against the desk. This was the truth Washington rarely saw in its briefing books: the unevenness, the randomness, the way survival felt like an accident of geography. Across the Atlantic, a National Security Council staffer drafted a memo that never officially circulated. Traoré's actions represent a rejection of abstraction. U.S. policy is built on abstraction. She deleted it before sending. Publicly, the U.S. response remained measured. Statements praised community engagement, while emphasizing institutional solutions. Diplomats urged restraint. Privately, contingency plans were updated.
"If he keeps doing this," a CIA analyst said, "someone will test him harder next time." They didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks later, intelligence intercepts suggested a coordinated strike. Not on a village, but on a convoy route Traoré had used before. The implication was clear. He was being studied. The question in Washington was no longer if he would go again. It was whether he should be allowed to. An emergency cable from the U.S. Embassy in Ouagadougou landed on desks before dawn. President exhibits pattern of personal risk-taking. Potential assassination scenario would have cascading regional consequences. In plain language, if he died, the Sahel might fracture beyond repair. Traoré was briefed on the threat the same morning. His security chief spoke carefully. "Sir, this is no longer about villages, it's about you." Traoré nodded. "And when it was about them," he replied, "no one warned me." That night he did not travel. He stayed in the capital, standing on the balcony of the residence, listening to distant generators and dogs barking in the dark. For the first time since Senga, he felt the weight of absence. He understood now the trap he had set for himself. If he went, he risked everything. If he stayed, the myth would fade, and with it the fragile trust he had ignited. In Senga, the villagers noticed his absence immediately. No disappointment, just a quiet recalibration. They knew nights like that did not repeat easily. An old man there said something that reached Ouagadougou through back channels. "He came once," the man said. "Now we know what was possible." That sentence traveled farther than anyone expected. In Washington, a senior advisor summarized the situation during a late briefing. "He's forcing a comparison," she said, "between leaders who appear and systems that don't." "So what do we do?" someone asked. She hesitated. "We watch," she said, "and we hope the lesson doesn't spread faster than the infrastructure." Weeks passed without incident, then months. The story faded from headlines but not from intelligence assessments. Traoré governed more quietly. Fewer speeches, fewer risks. But the image remained of a president standing in the dark, guarding a village that had nothing to offer him. It haunted allies and adversaries alike, because it raised a question no policy paper could answer. What happens when legitimacy is earned face-to-face in places power was never meant to go? No one knew, and somewhere in the Sahel, night continued to fall, unevenly, patiently, waiting to see who would stand in it next.